My name is Lisa Harriet. I'm a firm believer on bringing out general awareness. I have a very strange mentality, you see. I like to connect with people in a different way. Being an artist, it's actually a wonderful thing because you can go through different ways and visuals that you can let your imagination run wild, and bringing out such things is what I enjoy. My professional ambition is to be a great animator and a social media content creator. And I also like to bring out the messages that is so fresh and out there in the world, just out in a different way. Convincing people and trying to make a message very clear is something that I really enjoy doing, and that's what I did for my final project. So my final project is basically about the COVID-19 abuse that happened behind the lockdown. This made me kind of realize that the lockdown was not all happy and all sunshine and rainbows, where there was some really hard stuff that went through. With all the research that I came across, was a very few out of 1 million people that had actually gone through this. And it kind of inspired me to actually bring this message out there in the world, because it's a fresh topic and no one doesn't know about it until you actually research and look at it. So there was a very few people who actually reported out what had happened to them, and from that I took the numbers and I had put it into my animation. My animation covers 3 main topics, and in this video I feel very strongly that I have sent the message loud and clear. And this message basically is to show that this is what's happening behind the scenes of the lockdown, and that it's not easy for someone to go through this. And I'm saying this because there is lockdowns happening everywhere, there is COVID still, and I just want to bring out the message out to the world saying, look, this is what's happening as well. So yeah. And my inspiration for my animation was Lilo and Stitch, the Disney movie, 2001. That movie inspired me to be the person that I am today, and it's actually a great animation. The way the message was sent out through the characters and everything, I really admire that movie still today, and I used that on how Disney had sent the message out and inspired me to be an animator and a creator today. I wanted to send that message out through my animation.
I'm Javardhan. I'm a 3D generalist. The reason I chose 3D was because I had a passion since from A-levels itself, but I was introduced for the 3D background, but then I didn't work on it until I came to AOD. So I'll straight away jump to my final project. So my final project is a 3D short film for opening cutscene of a game. So here the genre I chose was film noir, but I added a little bit of toon shader. I just gave it my own twist, and I got the chance to work with lighting a little bit. So because film noir lighting is something that shows the emotion of the scene itself, so that's why I use lighting a lot. But the thing is, I wasn't focusing on realism, so it was easy for me to play with lights a lot. I was first introduced to AOD when I was during exhibition, and I saw work of some alumni, and what I saw was animation. So I was nice, that's something I would like to do. Because after A-levels, I didn't have much of an idea what I want to do. So at first I was taking risk, but then I managed to show my passion to it, and I managed to develop on it. So for my future, I want to hone the skills I have already, building my work ethics and learning new workflows. And yeah, that's it.
I'm Yumi.
I'm a digital illustrator and a 2D animator. I usually work on projects that are related to visual development, and that includes anything from the initial concepts to the final look. I like the idea of creating this conceptualized world where I get to create everything from the color palette and setting the mood and choosing the art style. For me, joining AOD was a very last-minute decision. I started off by wanting to pursue something else, but before my first year, a few months back, I realized that I saw the animation industry in a whole new light. Of course, there are these technical aspects and skills you need to learn, but there's also this whole creative side to it, and without the creativity, you can barely start a project of your own. So I realized that I can work on something and create these beautiful characters and backgrounds. The highlight of the degree for me was the creative briefs set by industry professionals. I chose a brief by this brand called Artisan Drinks, and they required marketing material to basically promote their range of drinks. So what I did was I created a 2D animation for them by incorporating like the brand colors, by incorporating liquid animations. I feel like I really represented the brand and also did a really cool project. Along with that, we also worked on our final projects. My final project was a 2D animation inspired by the early 2000s Cartoon Network shows that we grew up watching. Anything from Pokemon to Kids Next Door to Kim Possible, these were all inspirations to me throughout my entire degree, but especially during my final project. I got to work on these really cool fight scenes, and I did like these backhand jumps and running animation passes. These were all just a really cool experience for me, but also it was tough, but it was worth it throughout. From beginning to start, it was just completely worth it. In the future, I want to work on something that's related to animation and illustration too. I feel like with the use of these really expressive colors and art styles, you can bring a real campaign to life. And I hope to pursue that someday in the future.
Pereira, and this is my graduation reveal exhibit. So I know my name is a pretty unique spelling, but just get with me at this point, because let me just explain everything that's currently going on in my background. So currently I'm a 2D animator / illustrator, and I've been told my illustration skills are better than my animation skills, though I'm still learning. My final project is based on mental health, as one would present themselves within their head, events such as lockdown, COVID, and so on, as we moved from seeing each other face to face to now seeing each other's names on screen. So with that, I mean, a lot of us did go on a little bit of a journey, and so my final animation is based on that, where one who has gone through a lot, suddenly all of it hitting you at one point and therefore breaking down. That is how I've interpreted my final animation. If you look at my background, you will see it's all sorts of artwork. My specialty, I would say, is almost realism, because something about me staring at it for a while just makes me excited, especially when I start doing a certain, wherever I start with, it's the eyes, the hands, the nose. Something about it makes me just excited for some reason, because I'm capturing it the way I see it, and it's a bit swirly at first, and yes, my insecurities come in. So my illustration skills and animation skills come into, I would say, where it properly showed were my live briefs, which were curated by outside industries. So the industry I would like to go in is advertising, after all, because one thing that properly has been consistent in my life, unlike my art, is the fact that I like adverts basically. So starting from the Coca-Cola days, I mean, it has been so coherent in my life that I wanted to do business instead of engineering and medicine like all brown families. And then I wanted to do first HR and then marketing, and then I came into AOD after going to all of these business schools all around Sri Lanka. And then I found myself here. So I really do want to work in advertising, because I'm heavily inspired by Coca-Cola ads. I mean, they don't really need the advertisements, but the way they do it is very inspiring, because recently one of the ads they had come out with for COVID-19, for everyone to stay indoors and be safe, but they were showing first aid, essential workers all in these get-ups and everything, and they put a really calming song, and something about that mix between audio and video is just proper. It strikes the soul. I mean, anyone can just watch an ad and be like, okay, let me buy that exercise machine, for sure, tell scene. But then the way Coca-Cola does it, that's what I want to do. I want to inspire people through my advertisements, so that is why I am a 2D animation and do motion graphics on the side as well. The best highlight throughout my AOD degree has to be coming to school personally and seeing everyone, because unlike school, everyone has to be a certain way of thought, you know. There is no outside creativity, where else here everyone comes with their different backgrounds, different point of views, and we all get together and everyone's just talking about whatever they're interested in. You're just listening on and you are included in everything, so that's the best part. And definitely best part is knowing your lecturers, because sometimes you get, because you're in this for like almost 3 years, your lecturers are like your family at this point, and they are behind you, and and they support you throughout everything. Even if they've left the job, they will still come in and check in you. So that is how much your lecturers will care here. Another highlight would have to be making that forever friend sort of scenario, because you know, leave your outside group, it's just even your batchmates have like a certain love towards you with their certain quirks, and you get together and you suddenly find your entire batch is a creative team, because you got 3D designer, you've got the visual development, you got the person good with sound design, everything is ready and available, and it, you know, it adds up to the best sort of the way to end your degree, I would say. So that's a definitely plus side to a highlight of AOD. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you. I'm Tasha Pereira signing out. Bye.
I'm Shania. I'm an MGA student here, and I'm into visual development. Visual development is where we deal with the pre-production aspects of like a movie or a game or even animation. So we would look into like designing concepts for the environments and the characters and designing them from. So I'm really into visual development, so I really like designing characters. And then when it comes to my final animation over here, I wanted to create a emotional experience, not just for me but like for the person who's watching it, and that's what I want to do. I wanted to express my emotions through my artwork. So for that I went into like deep details, from like metaphoric meanings to journeys and all that. Yeah, so for my final animation I dealt with this concept where I wanted to show that I don't want to die, because I don't want to see anyone that I love cry. And to express this whole concept and like this whole idea, I used metaphors and I used flowers. The idea of flowers here is because flowers are there at one moment and then they just wilt away after being really beautiful and amazing for a really long time. So the flowers I used here for this animation to symbolize these aspects of death was the chrysanthemum and cherry blossoms. The chrysanthemum is actually considered a symbol of death, and they use it for graves and all that. That's why I used it to slightly metaphorically give the hint of what's about to happen and what my whole animation and the concepts I deal with is about. And then I used cherry blossoms because of this, I think it's a Japanese idea where a cherry blossom petal is like there and then they're beautiful and then just flow away in the wind. Okay, so as an artist, I am honestly really interested in like wanting to get an emotional appeal from the audience and the people that view my work, and I also want to tell a story. So if you look into some of my character designs, I want little details that express certain aspects of my character, either giving a little backstory to them or like showing their personality, from if their sarong is neatly pleated to show that they're a neat person, or if they are like really dirty to show that you know, they're a dirty human. So I want to deal with the stuff like that, but you know, when using these all these concepts all together, I wanted to finally like be able to create characters and like make people laugh, make people feel, make people happy, or even make people sad. But yeah, so I want to become a visual development artist someday, and hopefully give someone happiness through the designs I create.
Tara Pethiagada. I am an artist who specializes in illustration, which may be confusing as I chose an animation degree, but this is because I have always been interested in storytelling. Even before I got into art, I was always interested in writing and crafting different worlds and characters. And so I chose an animation degree because it felt like the perfect midpoint between storytelling as well as illustration. I want to work in the pre-production side of things because I love taking people's ideas and bringing them to life. I also love comic book art and I love just illustrating in general, and I feel like animation lays a basis for all of that, in that I would know how to do dynamic scenes and characters and how things look in motion, as well as quick drawing skills and so on. My final project was the biggest project that I have ever worked on, and I aimed to give it everything I had. My story centers around a little person in a big world, which is the kind of story that I usually ended up enjoying the most. And whether this is in a horror sense in terms of horror movies or in a happy sense in terms of exploration movies. Speaking of horror though, it's always been one of my biggest influences, and it's why I wanted to implement it in my final animation as well. Even when I was a kid and I was afraid of horror movies, I still loved it in smaller doses because I love the aesthetics of it. I love horror things because it gives you a sense of how the world can sometimes be uncontrollable and ununderstandable. And I chose to also mix this with themes from the deep sea, as I love the deep sea for much of the same reason. So in the end, my final project was centered around a little girl named Keiko who is on a fishing board, and she's floating with her parents when a locket comes by and she picks it up. When she opens it, she is transported into another world full of strange and mysterious creatures underwater, and she needs to survive them in order to get back to her parents on the surface. Along the way, she meets these sea children as well as these humanoid monsters deep in this ocean who she has to also survive, and that is where the main horror element comes from as well. I mainly developed this plotline because I wanted to make as many creature designs as I could, as I love designing them and coming up with their lore and how they would work. I went through several different versions of the same creatures, such as the same body with different fins and so on and so forth, with many different thumbnails, as the importance of process work and not settling for your first idea has been drilled into me by my lecturers. So I worked on over 1,000 thumbnails for this project alone, not including sketches and further development work like concept art or storyboards and things like that. So it was definitely one of the more challenging projects. I chose 2D as my animation medium, as I always loved the look of 2D more than 3D. As also, I am an illustrator, and so I obviously like drawing and painting more than I like sculpting or rigging. I also love how in 2D they sometimes mix styles where you have maybe the characters are very simple while in the backgrounds and the environment is much more detailed and more painterly. And I wanted to use that sort of concept for my animation as well to help tell the story, in that my characters and the surface world are quite cartoony in style, while the water and the underwater creatures and so forth are much more detailed and rendered in style. To achieve this, I also mixed not only styles but mediums, in that half my animations where everything was complex, I hand painted and hand drew everything. But for animations that I could get away with it, I used the After Effects puppet tool, which after some trial and error I got the hang of. For example, if I wanted to do a character waving, I would separate the hand from the front of the sleeve and the back of the sleeve, and so on and so forth for the rest of the body and each element that I needed to use in After Effects. I also use After Effects for the effects animations that I would add, such as glows and water effects and things like that. I studied a lot of YouTube tutorials, and I messed around with the program until I knew it better and knew how to get the effects that I needed. I also did color correction and things like that to make my final product a lot more based on what I had in mind when I started. My specific influences, I studied the deep sea a lot and how creatures there move around. I also studied how the water looks, the caustics and the ripples, and how to simplify that in my animation so that I could have it in my own style and have things have a more believable air to it. I also drew all the creatures that were the most interesting to me so that I could mix and match their features with my own characters so I could have a better understanding of that as well. I watched a lot of documentaries such as the Blue Planet 2 to get a better idea of how the different zones of the ocean were as well. I also did a lot of research in developing the characters, such as their backstories, their character traits, and so on. A lot of which wasn't actually shown in the final animation, but it helped me when I was designing them in their colors and shape language and so forth. I also, in terms of the process, there were many mistakes that I made along the way, such as not really knowing how long scenes took. I would usually overestimate my abilities and end up with too many scenes and not enough time to complete them. And so, thanks to my lecturers and feedback, I was able to cut down on scenes that were not really necessary for the story and characters that were kind of redundant so that I could focus on quality instead of quantity. And I ended up with 4 minutes of animation in total, which was already a stretch for my skills. But I am happy with how it turned out thanks to listening to lecturer feedback and trial and error. I learned a lot throughout this project on in each stage of the process, from sketching to sound design, and I know how each stage of the process works together more as well now, and therefore I have this level of experience to fall back on for my future projects, which I'm grateful for. So to sum up, while my project had its difficulties, I am happy to have done it and to have this experience so that in my future projects I know maybe what to improve on and what I could do better. And I am grateful to have had this experience with the rest of my classmates who are also very talented artists and who I could learn from and who encouraged me as well. I wish everyone all the best.
My name is Aruza Rashid and I am a 2D and 3D motion artist. My final project was about a traveling classmate named Jack and the mishap that happens around Halloween. So my final project was divided into 2 parts. The first part of the project was solely focused on the pre-production stage, where we had to do some research on the kinds of animations that we wanted to do, plus their storylines and the styles that we wanted to go for. So this was the one that I was looking forward the most, because this was the one that I showcased to the world of what I was capable of. So I had a love for motion graphics in 2D and as well as in 3D. So I noted down all of the ideas that I had in mind, and I had a discussion with my lecturers on the kind of animations that I wanted to do. So after much discussions, I decided to go for a story that about Halloween. I never had the chance to celebrate Halloween, but I had absolutely loved everything that is there about the holiday itself. And after I had this idea set in mind, I did a research on the kinds of artists who did a storyline based on Halloween, and one of the artists that I loved was Tim Burton. I loved the Nightmare Before Christmas and the Corpse Bride, and as well as I had loved some of the videos, short films from CG Geek, that's a YouTube channel. And as for the style for this one, I would say that I had loved the stop motion style. I wanted to go for a traditional way of it, but since I didn't have the resources to do so, I decided to go for a 3D computer generated one. And I had the help from my colleagues and my teachers and friends to do it, and and it was very challenging at first, but I was surprised at myself that I could do it. So as for the time management for this one, I would say I handled pretty well because I had the resources, I kept everything in a schedule, I kept everything on track, but I would say that all in all, this was one of the projects that I was most enthusiastic about because I was able to learn a lot of things, and so this has definitely encouraged me to create my own short films in the future. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Roshan Pereira, and I'm a 2D animator and creator. My passion is mainly focused on 2D artworks and 2D animations, although I occasionally like to work on 3D as well. So I tend to work on the pre-production side of things, so whether it's storyboards, concept arts, or even creating character designs, I feel like it's more creative and exciting. So if you look at my artworks, I like to focus on the mood and atmosphere, since I feel like it invokes some sensation or emotion whenever someone looks at them. So for my short film, which was a short animation based in space, summer farming future, it tells the story of two brothers who encounter a giant space creature that's a symbol. So for this project, I combined creativity, which I modeled and animated the spaceship in 3D, and so I tend to mix and match, use different elements and techniques. One example was when I made a video and advertisement in which I made a simple 3D which I then bonus script. So I tend to work with different
My name is Northumbria, and I am a 2D artist and animator. My expertise lies in character designing, concept art, storyboarding, and of course 2D animation. I really enjoy video editing and am interested in exploring the world of 3D as well. Since I was a child, I have been really passionate about anime, or Japanese animations, and I've expressed this passion in various forms such as creating artworks, making music videos, and even cosplaying. But I have always wanted to be part of the team that creates these wonderful animations, and I decided to become an animator in order to learn the things I'm most passionate about and someday work along the team that creates these beautiful creations. My final project is about a girl who loves sword dance and was brought up in the forest and has to do her best in order to protect the ones she loves. My inspiration for this comes from my love for wuxia and xianxia stories that are based off ancient China. I did my research into classical Chinese sword dance and looked into how it came to be as well as how it progressed throughout the years. I also looked into Chinese mythology in order to increase the accuracy of my project and story. In order to make this project successful, I made sure that I knew my characters inside out, and I created complete character sheets for each of the 4 characters I had and focused mainly on the main character, Hope. I made sure that their designs were really accurate to the culture they were based off as well. I made backgrounds that were mainly in watercolor style and experimented using camera movements on them as well. Finally, I moved on to the animation stage. Here, I graded my shots according to how important they were and how difficult they were to execute. This helped me when I was moving back and forth between the shots, and it also helped me keep track of the progress I was making as I was doing them. As I was working with music, I had to make sure the shots were in beat with the music, and this meant I would be jumping from software to software. In order to help me with this, I did a pipeline shot that would help me figure out the workflow that I would be following for each of my shots. Once the shots were complete, I compiled them together and added them to the music, which turned out to look really nice. I was very satisfied with how it turned out to be. This project helped me really get the experience of working on an animation project from start to finish by figuring out workflows and also finding methods that would make things easier. Now that I have completed my final year, I understand that there is so much to learn about in this industry and that there's always space to grow as an animator and a designer. I look forward to working with the team and learning how to adapt to different conditions and workflows as well. I someday hope to be some really well-known person in this industry. Thank you.
And I'm from the Motion Graphics and Animation department. I'm a 2D animation student, and I also work in illustration and character design and also 3D animation. A little bit about myself is that I grew up watching a lot of cartoons and anime, and I started drawing fan art because of it. I eventually grew up to draw more personal art and started focusing more on developing skills on how to convey a good story, a good memory and a moment. This all really helped me out in my college final project. About my college final project is that I chose to explore the themes of creative burnout. My story revolves around perfectionism and its contribution to creative burnout. My story starts off with an artist going about his day all relaxed and enjoying his daily life. And as he's working, he gets a message from his boss. His boss says his work is kind of mediocre and he could do a lot better. And this sticks with him. It pushes him to improve himself, and he spends a lot of time improving his paintings and seeing what he could improve on. And this is a normal reaction. But when he actually gets praise, he starts overthinking. He's eaten by the thought of that he can do better even when he gets praise. So throughout the film, he develops an obsessive behavior on this idea of a perfect painting. He nitpicks every single thing about all of his paintings, and eventually his body can't keep up, and it just breaks down. And from there, he also has a mental breakdown. For my character design, I went with a bulb head on a man, and inside this bulb head is a golden liquid. It's a visual representation of the energy and the motivation he has towards his projects and his daily life. In the beginning of the film, we see him having like a full head, and to show that he's more motivated and energetic to tackle things. In my film, I wanted to explore what creative burnout was and researched into factors that cause it, and I honed in on perfectionism. In this film, I tried to convey the message that perfectionism may backfire on you, and going after a perfect result may cause you to burn out. I hope this message resonates with someone, and thank you for listening.
And I'm a 3D artist and who is interested in making 3D game levels. And if I were to talk about my final project, so the story, I would say the story goes on as an archaeologist discovering this abandoned village. And so basically this archaeologist, he has no clue what's in the village. So basically he discovers this inner temple which holds this magical stone which is inside the temple. There's an inner temple, and where he comes across this inner temple, as in he has this smart gadgets, as in like a radiator and stuff. Like he detects all the power sources inside this certain temple, and like he walks into the temple, and then he discovers there is this certain element which powers up this inner temple, and he grabs onto the stone, and everything starts like breaking down and collapsing. But like if I were to talk about like how what I wanted to show in that animation was mostly about my architecture work, as in 3D, the models I have built, and mostly the texturing. I'll explain what is inside this inner temple. So I wanted to keep it very ancient and very like magical, as in like I wanted to give it a glow, which is a blue lighting, and like showing that there's some kind of a power source. And then my character basically it's in first person, and he walks in and then he discovers this stone which is glowing and which is on this sort of like a statue, like a stone, and he grabs on it, and then everything starts collapsing on him. And I wanted to keep my like models very realistic, and basically so the textures in my models, I wanted to keep it very like this village supposed to be an abandoned village, and so like I wanted to like keep the textures very like cracked and like old, and like it's almost going to break down sort of thing. And so basically what I did was like I took a lot of references from all these YouTubers, like how this is being done and everything, and that's how I created all this textured buildings and everything. And if I were in the future, I would like to be like working on 3D game levels, and maybe like designing environments for animations and other projects.
My name is Nadish Jayasundara. I'm a 3D generalist. I'm mostly interested in 3D modeling, texturing and game design. I also do video editing, compositing and sound design as well. Since childhood, I had this huge admiration for 3D animated movies like Toy Story, Shrek, for example. And then growing up, I started watching a lot of Hollywood movies with a lot of visual effects, and I wanted to see how those things were created. Then I started looking into VFX breakdowns and behind the scenes footage, and I think that's what set me on this path. Talking about my final project, it's about this boy who has a huge obsession with dinosaurs. We call them like dino maniacs or dino nerds. So the story is about this boy making a time machine and going to the past to see the dinosaurs with his own eyes. I think I wrote this story because as a kid I was also a bit of a dino nerd, so I think that's what influenced me to write this story. First, I thought about this idea and I wanted to go for an animated short with a Disney DreamWorks kind of style in mind. So I did a bit of research on this style and came up with some character designs. And then I took the character designs I did and took them into a 3D software to model them. And then I used some texturing tools to add color and apply the materials I needed for the characters. Then I brought them back into animation software to rig them, which means like adding bones to the characters to control them while animating. And then I also modeled the T-Rex for my story, and I used the same procedure of texturing and rigging on the T-Rex as well. And after that I modeled background assets like chairs, trees, we call them as props. And after all the preparations were done for the animation, I started animating. Animating is one of the key processes in an animated film which delivers the believability of the story. So the better the animation, the better the final film will be. And after all these steps, I made a final project to my best of ability, and I think I did a good job. So now although I'm almost graduated now, I still have a lot to learn and a long way to go. I think working alongside industry professionals will give me a good example of how the industry works and what we have to do in the field. I hope to become a well-known figure in the industry someday.